Welcome back. How do we get more South Africans to read and how to get more books into our children's hands? This year, the country's Book Development Council will aim to fulfill these two key objectives during National Book Week. Now, in its 6th year, National Book Week is recognized as one of the longest running and most successful reading campaigns here in South Africa. Starting on Monday, #GoingPlaces and #BuyABook will be used on social media sites to reflect the physical journey of National Book Week, traveling throughout South Africa and to encourage a culture of reading. Now, two women who are very involved in all of this is our national librarian, Professor Ralebipi-Simela, who joins us from our studios in Pretoria this morning. And then here in studio, we've got Elitha van der Sandt, who's the CEO of South Africa's Book Development Council. Very good morning to you, Elitha. Thanks for joining us as well. Professor Ralebipi-Simela, if I can quickly ask you, to be honest with you, I never knew that we had a national librarian. Do you think South Africans know that? And how do we get South Africans to interact with your office a little bit better?
Well, we do have a national library in South Africa. And like every other country, there is a national library in a country whose responsibility it is to make sure that everything that is published about that country, be it by South Africans or about South Africa, is hosted at home in the National Library. And it is made available to the South African people and to the world. So you have a national librarian whose responsibility is to make sure that the heritage of the country, the culture of the country, the identity of the country is actually preserved, and it is collected and it is made available to everyone through the National Library, and that is what I do.
That's fantastic. I also see that you've been appointed as the chair of the African Library and Information Associations and Institution section on national libraries. What does that mean for us?
Well, that is very correct. It means that the National Library of South Africa is a chair to a committee of national librarians of the African continent. So we need to provide leadership in terms of how the National Library will assist the country, the government, to make sure that the materials are there and people are reading. So my biggest message is read, Mzansi, read.
We'll get back to that message now, but I just want to ask Elitha, who's here with me in studio in Johannesburg, to tell us about the launch yesterday. Book Week, National Book Week was launched in Parktown. What happened yesterday and what's your expectation for this year?
Indeed, we launched National Book Week yesterday. We unveiled another element of National Book Week, which is the buy a book element. And then we also unveiled the bus, which is the going places element of National Book Week. And both elements is really about getting books out there and getting books into people's homes.
Now, the concept of #GoingPlaces and #BuyABook, tell us about that and what kind of impact are you hoping to achieve with this?
We gave birth to Going Places last year, #GoingPlaces last year. Historically, books have not been part of many people's lives in South Africa. So with #GoingPlaces, we are now taking books to people through the bus that is traveling through the country. But also the fact that you don't need to go anywhere with a book. The book can take you places. And then #BuyABook is about more than half of South African households having no books in their home, no leisure reading books. We're not speaking about
a single book.
Not a single leisure reading book.
Yeah.
So there's no books to read for pleasure, for enjoyment, for escapism.
And we should point out to South Africa that Huisgenoot and You magazine is not a book.
It's a magazine.
Yes, thank you. Professor Ralebipi-Simela, just quickly, give me your views on the culture of reading here in South Africa, and why do we have so few books in our homes? Why do you think?
Well, I think there are so many different reasons why we have very few books in the homes. What that means is that we're basically not a reading nation. We are not reading. It's not part of our culture. However, we are part of the international global community. And if we don't read, it means we cannot lead. It means we cannot know because it is through reading, the ability to read, to connect, to engage, that we can become a lot more better people at an individual level, at a collective level, and at a global level. Well, we have historical reasons why we're not reading. The libraries have been there in this country since 1818. However, the majority of South Africans were not part of that culture. And now, when we try to reflect the heritage and the history and the culture of South Africans through the published book, it's very disturbing to realize that the majority of our collections in our libraries are foreign to us. They do not really show the indigenous South African. For instance, if I were to look in that mirror, the normal indigenous South African cannot be, that picture is distorted. You don't see ourselves. We do not have enough materials that we have written, that we have produced, and we're trying to really, through interventions such as the National Book Week, to inculcate that culture of reading and writing.
Thank you. Book Week is making a big dent in this, and I love the campaigns that you're running. I thank you for joining us today. That's our National Librarian, Professor Ralebipi-Simela, live from Pretoria. Thank you once again for joining us. Just to wrap up Book Week with you, tell us about the partnerships. I understand correctional services are also involved with you, and the kind of outlook that you have for these partnerships.
I think it's important to note that there are things happening around the book in South Africa. National Book Week gives everyone an opportunity to come together to actually make a better impact as we move along. So the first partnership is the Department of Arts and Culture, who is an important partner. The Department of Basic Education also came on board. Schools and education is important. Correctional services who believe that reading has a key role to play in rehabilitating inmates and offenders, and so they'll be visiting them on the 8th of September, for example. Then the publishers and the booksellers, we can go into what we've arranged is you can go into an exclusive books or a bargain books and buy a book for 20 Rand and give it to someone who doesn't own a book. And then there's also McDonald's, who we're at today, and we are with them looking at reading corners at the McDonald's restaurants, and they'll be hosting us.
That's fantastic, but our people spend too much time at McDonald's already as it is. Let's quickly tell people where we can get more information on National Book Week. It starts on Monday, and in the age of social media, how do people quickly interact with Book Week?
Okay, 7 to 13 September, National Book Week. You can find us on Facebook, National Book Week SA, and also www.sabookcouncil.co.za. And we look forward to you going in to buy a book even.
But you won't see me at McDonald's, I'll tell you that. I won't be reading at McDonald's. I'll come to the library rather, because I get a sense that, if we're being accused of being way too obese also in South Africa. So we should stay away from. Go to read at McDonald's, don't buy the burger. That's the message today. Thank you, Elitha. Elitha van der Sandt is the CEO of South Africa's Book Development Council. And yes, it's a little bit of light-hearted fun, but it's serious business next week, the National Book Week. We should all interact a little bit better with National Book Week. And if you're a school principal or a teacher, encourage the children also to take part in this wonderful initiative. We move on now to our tweet of the day.